2017 has been a fairly slow reading year for me. Apparently I can't learn from my mistakes because once again, I went and read like a bunch of books at once, and this always results in me taking a break from all of those books, and then returning to read snippets from each one, and it just takes forever to read books that way. I would not recommend. But I am gonna put a stop to that bad habit this year. I hope. I'm gonna read one book at a time. Okay, maybe 2 books at a time. I'm not gonna go any more than 3 books at a time. Also, I had the lovely excuse of being in college, and that took up a lot of time.
I can feel your anger. It gives you focus.
But now it is 2018. It is a time to reflect on the books I read last year. There honestly wasn't that many. According to Goodreads, I've read 23 books in 2017. That's not really too bad. I think I did read a few more though that I just didn't put on Goodreads, but 23 is close enough. One thing that I am happy about is that I was able to read some pretty thick books and some fantasy books that have been on my shelf for a long time. I've finally dived into Brandon Sanderson's books, so that's one thing that I'm happy about. These are not going to be in any particular order, they're just going to be off the top of my head. So one of the first books I read in 2017, it feels like such a long time ago now, that was Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. In short, it's about a man who finds out there is an entire different world and society underneath of London, like in the London Underground. It reminded me a lot of Alice in Wonderland. It's basically Neil Gaiman's version of Alice in Wonderland. And if that doesn't sound good, I got nothing for you. This was the first Neil Gaiman book I've ever read, and I did really enjoy the writing. I feel like it could have been maybe a bit better in some areas, but I still really enjoyed it. Next up is The Weizmann Sphere by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, you guys are probably tired of hearing me say how much I love The Name of the Wind, and how much I love this book, and I'm not gonna stop. I actually never did put up a review for this book. I still might do that. I'm not too sure. Everybody kind of knows that I really love it, so. But I am gonna make a lot more lore videos. I really need to get on making those. But anyway, The Weizmann Sphere is the sequel to The Name of the Wind, and I don't really want to explain what happens here because it might spoil stuff for The Name of the Wind. It has almost a type of musical element to it, and not just because the main character plays the lute, but just the descriptions I really enjoy. And I really love the way that the world building works, because even in the second book, I'm still finding out so much about this world. He doesn't go and throw all the info at you at once. In editing, I'm probably going to cut out some of the stuff I just said because I just rambled on for quite a while. Next up is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I listened to the audiobook of this while I was doing a road trip with my family, and my mom actually listened to it as well, and she really enjoyed it with me. It was actually a lot of fun. We both thought that we knew who the murderer was, but actually all along we were totally wrong, so it was actually a lot of fun, and I'm really glad I was never spoiled by watching any of the movies or anything, because it wouldn't have made the book as much fun, I think. Next up, now this isn't actually a book, this is a poem, but for one of my college classes, I had to read Beowulf. It was actually the first story we read for this class, and I fell in love with Beowulf. Like, that is one of my favorite epic poems of all time. Honestly, I don't know what else to say about Beowulf, except for that in college I also wrote a long narrative poem of my own, and now I'm thinking of changing it and adding some kind of Anglo-Saxon elements to it. And this is a long narrative poem that I actually want to publish into a book of my own one day, so maybe you'll see more of that. Now, in this same class, I also read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and this is another story that I really enjoyed. It is an Arthurian tale about Sir Gawain, and basically a Green Knight appears to him one day, this green kind of specter knight, and basically he tells him to grab an axe and cut off his head. Then one day he will do the same to Sir Gawain. Well, actually he challenges King Arthur, but Sir Gawain kind of steps up. So Sir Gawain does this, he cuts off the Green Man's head, and the Green Man picks it back up and puts it back on, and says that he will come back and do the same to Sir Gawain. Man, I would not make deals like that. Who does that? Anyway, this is a medieval romance poem. It's like symbolism with hunting. There's all these hunting scenes, and there's this lord whose lady is trying to hunt Sir Gawain in the bedroom when her husband is out hunting in the forest, but Sir Gawain, tries to be the good guy and, like, back off woman because she's married. But basically there's symbolism going on in the forest as well as in the bedroom. You can really see that kind of Middle Ages type of humor in it, and it was a lot of fun to read. Next is the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. There is The Final Empire, The Well of Ascension, yes, I don't have matching covers, and The Hero of Ages. And I read all 3 of these in 2017, and this is a new favorite series of mine. It was so good, especially the ending of the third book. That was such a good ending and a great way to end the series. Oh, and if you don't know, these books have one of the best magic systems of all time. Basically, in this world, there's people known as allomancers, and they can swallow different alloys of metal, like tin, or iron, or pewter, or gold, and these different metals will give them different abilities. They just drink these little vials of metal with some water to help wash it down, and they get these amazing abilities. However, there is Mistings, and then there is Mistborn. Now, Mistings are only able to use one certain metal. However, that's the only power they can have, so Mistings are more common than Mistborn. Mistborn are people who can use all of the metals and all of the powers. I mean, maybe I'm not making it sound cool, but it's really cool. And the first book is basically a fantasy heist novel, which is an amazing idea, and I'm still going to be making some reviews of those books soon, as well as some lore videos on them. Next up is the 3 Darker Shade of Magic books by V.E. Schwab. In short, the Darker Shade of Magic series is about a boy named Kel who has a magic coat that he can flip inside out an infinite amount of times, and he also can travel through portal type things and go to different Londons. There is a red London, a black London, and a white London. It's a really cool idea, and while I did enjoy the books, I still had some issues with them. There's just some things I didn't really like in them, and there's some things that I feel like could have been a lot better, and for me they just still felt like young adult books even though it is an adult series. But yeah, for the most part, I did enjoy them. The next 2 are actually my most recent reads that I just put reviews up for, and that is The Doldrums and The Doldrums and the Helmsley Curse, which is the sequel. And these books are just really fun middle grade books, and I read them at the perfect time, not just because it was winter and the second book takes place during Christmas time and during winter, but I read them right after reading the Mistborn series, which was like a really heavy fantasy book, and I felt like I needed something to kind of pick me up, just like an easy read. So of course, going for a middle grade series, that was my best idea, and I'm really glad that I picked the Doldrum series. I do have reviews up, but in short, it is a whimsical series about a boy who wants to be an adventurer, and his grandparents are famous adventurers, but he has never met them until the second book. And yeah, there actually wasn't really a whole lot going on in the first one, but I still found it really enjoyable to read, just because of the writing and the fun little world and characters. The second book really picks up with the plot, and it gets a lot more exciting. Next up is the audiobook of The Secret Garden. Now, I listened to this, I believe it was actually last January, and actually I listened to the majority of it as I was shoveling snow from driveways, and it just made me really miss the spring. I do remember being not really disappointed, but a little bit underwhelmed by the ending. I don't really remember why, but it was still a lot of fun to listen to. Oh, I almost forgot to mention A Monster Calls by Patrick Rothfuss. I do not want to do that. A Monster Calls. You've probably heard of it, or you've watched the movie. I actually haven't watched the movie yet, but I really, really love this book. It's actually quite an emotional book. It is just a magnificent book, not to mention it has some really cool illustrations. I feel like there's more books that I've read that I really want to add to this, but apparently these are the ones that I picked from my Goodreads. There's gotta be more. So I think I've actually read some pretty good books this year. Let me know if you've read any of the ones that I mentioned. I plan on reading a lot more this year in 2018. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and feel free to click the bell icon if you want to be notified for when I upload. Also, feel free to tell me down below one of your 2018 resolutions. Also, make sure to let me know some of your favorite books you have read in 2017, and I might just add them to my 2018 TBR.